Here's the thing. When it comes to who really stands to gain the most tonight, Barack Obama and Mitt Romney aren't anywhere in the equation. Instead, their investors will be the real winners and losers tonight.
My fellow Americans, our democracy is hurting. While the people have been paying for the functions of government, special interest groups and other affluent individuals have been paying the politicians and receiving all the benefits. This video will be taking a look at the current state of American politics, evaluating the steps that led to the current state of affairs, and how it affects the politician and who advantages most from the system. And at the end of the video, I believe no one will doubt that our government is corporate sponsored. Campaign finance refers to all funds raised in order to promote politicians, political parties, or specific policies. And there have been two recent Supreme Court cases that have opened the door to much greater political influence by outside groups. The first, Citizens United vs. FEC, was a result of Citizens United wishing to release an anti-Hillary Clinton movie seen to the left. Previous regulations prohibited corporations from using their general treasury to create political ads, and set a time span of 30 days before a national primary where these forms of media couldn't be released. Afterwards, both regulations have been lifted. The second case, McCutcheon vs. FEC, was initiated by Sean McCutcheon, claiming that his First Amendment right to freedom of speech was being violated by limiting the amount of political contributions he could make. As a result, the previous limit of $117,000 was thrown out, and unlimited contributions are allowed as long as they still follow existing limits seen in the chart here. Key facts to notice: a single candidate can only receive $26,000, but now an individual could donate to as many candidates they so please. Independent Senator Bernie Sanders had this to say.
And Amy, in my view, what the justices, the right-wing justices are talking about is freedom of speech for billionaires and large corporations to own American democracy.
The second section of this video evaluates the politician, and I'd like to ask you what you think the typical day of a politician comprises.
I don't know, something amazing, I guess.
Well, actually, it's quite the contrary. As you can see in this PowerPoint released by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, roughly half of the average workday is spent making phone calls to raise money. That's right, half a politician's day is dedicated to making sure they have enough money for their next election cycle. These calls can be to friends, lobbyists, and sometimes specific companies. And I'd like to show you a sample of what these calls can be like.
This is Eleanor Norton, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. I am a senior member, a 20-year veteran, and am chair of the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management. I'm handling the largest economic development project in the United States. I was, frankly, surprised to see that we don't have a record, so far as I can tell, of your having given to me. It must have been me who hasn't, frankly, done my homework to ask for a contribution earlier. So I'm trying to make up for it by asking for one now.
I don't think I have to truly evaluate the startling manner Ms. Norton used her political influence, but I do wish you to realize that it's essentially her responsibility to make that call, so don't judge her too hard. But anyway, second manner of fundraising in Washington occurs in the morning over breakfast. Here is a real example of an invitation to one of these events, and I'd like to point out two specific facts. One, the breakfast was being held by one congressman to benefit another. And two, it's making the opportunity to even meet a congressman pay to play. This points out two essential facts we need to understand. One, no matter what congressmen have been doing, they have to raise money, even if it's not for themselves. And two, I believe best explained by former Idaho Congressman Walt Minnick, you may end up voting the wrong way because you haven't fully understood both sides of the story, even if you have integrity. As the cost of holding political office has increased nearly twofold, as can be seen here in this graph, it's become almost impossible for an individual to fund a campaign by themselves. So they have to reach out to outside groups. But in this chart, it can be seen that donors will only provide contributions to those whose ideologies fall nearly in line with each other. The logical step we can make is that money won't affect a politician's decision because they only achieved office because they were found to support the right interests. And sadly, since 7% of the population is garnering roughly 60% of political donations, there is little doubt of whose interests are being represented. The next section of the video will be providing a few examples of where corporations receive massive benefits. The most exceptional example is GE.
General Electric reported $5.1 billion in profits from business done within the U.S. last year. But they paid zero income tax and, in fact, claim a tax benefit of $3.2 billion.
As a result, an independent study was done, and they found that several multinational companies have received a 22,000% return on every dollar they spent on Another example, presented by our president, Mr. Obama, is on, what do you know, tax breaks.
This year, and Republicans in Congress actually had to take a stand on policies that would help the middle class and working Americans. What yes on was another massive tax cut for the wealthiest Americans.
A more humorous example of the influence donors have over politicians was during a Republican Jewish coalition meeting held by billionaire casino mogul Sheldon Adelson.
I took a helicopter ride from the occupied territories across and just felt personally how extraordinary that was.
Did you catch the problem? Probably not. But Chris Christie's mistake was referring to Palestine as an occupied territory, which by the UN it is, but the comment offended Mr. Adelson, and as a result, Governor Christie was asked to apologize, which he did. For a man allegedly willing to stop traffic over political endorsements, it's pretty funny to see that he's gonna apologize over a true statement. I close by returning to the beginning. Our democracy leans on the shoulders of business, not for the benefits of society, but for the re-election of our congressmen and women. In a system that relies on money so heavily, we the people can only change it or beat it by paying up. Because in politics, money talks.
You tried to buy a congressman lately?